Hello, I want to talk to you about horses and the cavalry charge conducted by the Canadian, I suppose it must have been the Mounties, anyway, the police. And there's a very emotive video going round where an old lady gets pushed over or bumped into and falls or whatever. Now, first of all, I do want to say that those police were not charging. They were jogging through the crowd, but they were, and of course they caused some damage, but they could have caused a lot more if they'd have gone into a gallop. So give them some credit for trying to push people out of the way and not trying to do too much damage. They could have done a lot more. Of course, that doesn't mean that I believe that anything that the police are doing in Canada right now, or in Ottawa anyway, is okay. The latest news I heard was that Trudeau was trying to get the police to confiscate animals under the guise of animal protection. There's always some hypocritical reason for these, justifying these things, isn't there? They were going to confiscate animals because, of course, it was so cruel leaving them in those vans all the time. And then they were going to keep them in little horrible boxes for a week so that they'd suffer and the owners would know that. And then they were going to, as they put it, euthanize them. They were going to kill them. This was, just... I'm speechless with horror at what the Canadian government is up to at the moment. I'm just speechless. And so I'm just not going... I mean, you know how I feel about dogs. I've made a couple of videos about the Afghanistan thing, haven't I? Now, look, a trigger warning, everyone. I'm going to show a picture of a horse's skull. You're going to learn something about horses, and you're going to learn something about how to get out of the way of a horse. Okay, but first I have to say that if you are being in any way pushed by a horse, the safest place for you to be is 20 yards away and not near the horse's rear end. Just remember that. I cannot emphasize strongly enough that if you are being pushed in any way by a horse, get out of the way of that horse. It's bigger than you, it's stronger than you, it's heavier than you, it's faster than you. And the only thing you have over a horse is you're cleverer than a horse. And if you get in a horse's way, you're stupider than a horse. Okay, so I'm going to show you a picture of a horse's skull, and I'm going to do it for a particular reason, not just for the fun of it. Now, let's just talk about a horse's head. People think that because horses have these big, long heads and faces, that they've got huge brains and they're very wise. No. Most of the horse's face is actually chewing equipment. Just look at the size of that jawbone, because it needs to be heavy to deal with grass. And sinuses, because horses don't lose heat that easily. And it's got these huge sinuses to help dissipate the heat of their own breath. The horse's brain is somewhere between its eyes there. It's got a brain the size of a potato. And sometimes it's not worth much more than a potato to the horse either, because they are reactive animals. They react. They don't think, they don't spend time philosophizing, and they have very tiny brains in relation to the size of their bodies. Okay, but I want you to notice the horse's teeth. It has basically the same mammalian face that you have. The only difference is that a horse has, well, they're not really legs, but what we call legs. They're longer, and a horse has to bend down to eat the grass. So what happened was the horse's face grew to help shorten the distance, and the incisors are there at the front. They're the snippy bits that cut the grass, and then at the back the tongue transfers the grass to the molars to be chewed. And that left a gap between the incisors and the molars. And that gap is called the bars. And that's where the bit goes. You see, so you can see the bit which you think of as being, you know, sort of taking up most of the horse's face. It's actually right at the front of the horse's face. That head's much bigger than you realise. Now, you'll see also there's a couple of little sharp canines there. Those are called wolf teeth, and in wild stallions they're probably a lot bigger than that. They're used for fighting. You do occasionally find a mare with wolf teeth, but they're basically a male horse's equipment, and they can be very vicious. But, you know, a lot of modern domesticated horses, those wolf teeth are so loose that they can actually be removed just by, you know, pulling them out with your fingers. So, and they get in the way of the bit, so they frequently are removed. Right, so that's the horse's head. Now, when you put a bit in the horse's head, what happens is, if the horse is properly trained, it will lower its head, and then, here's a picture of the horse. There we are. You see how the rein comes out what looks like the bottom of that bit ring. Well, what happens is the horse puts its head down, and then you give a gentle pressure on the bit, and the horse is actually leaning against the bit. And if for some reason the bit slips back into the molars, you've lost control of the horse. That's called getting the bit between its teeth. You must have heard that expression before. Because you're using the bars, they're fairly sensitive, so you can use those to send messages to the horse. If the bit goes back into the molars, then it can't feel anything. So that's why some bridles you'll see straps here or around the nose or something. Some of them are there to stop the bit from sliding back, because for one reason or another, this particular horse, that happens. All right, so there you have the basic method of controlling the horse. If you yank the bit, then, I mean, that's a plastic, the bit piece, the mouthpiece is plastic, but most of them are metal, especially for police and that sort of thing. If you yank that down onto the bars, you're going to hurt the horse. Because what you're going to do is you're going to slap the metal bit into the bar and numb it. It'll just go numb. So you won't have any control over the horse after that, not for about 20 minutes. So all of this has to be done gently, or with just sort of gentle pressure. Now, just a minute, my husband is shouting into the phone. I want to ask him to stop. That's the trouble with not having a door on this attic. All right, so what was I saying? I was talking about how you can hurt a horse, wasn't I? By yanking the bit. And if you yank it, you'll render the horse's mouth or the bars numb, and you won't have any control, and this is why I'm emphasising this. There is a saying in the horse world about horses. A horse follows its head. And I want you to remember that. Now, let's think, if you are in some situation where you're being pushed by a horse and you can't get out of the way. Again, I want to tell you, the safest place with a horse is over there. Now, not anywhere near its hind legs, by the way. Getting away from a horse and running towards the back is a big mistake. And also behind the horse is an even worse mistake. Horses have an ability to see. They can't see directly in front of their heads, if you look where their eyes are. they can see, I don't remember how much it is, it's quite a lot, but it's not directly in front of their heads. It's right the way round their backs. And then again, it's not directly behind their bottoms. So if they catch any sign of anything unusual moving in that situation, they're likely to kick out or get very nervous. That's why bicyclists should always shout or ring a bell or something to let a horse rider know that they're coming past, because the horse will suddenly see this thing silently creeping up on them. You know, a bike is pretty quiet, and they some horses will react very badly when suddenly this bike comes into view. All right, so just remember that. Not directly in front of a horse and not directly behind it. Those are very dangerous places, especially directly behind it, because horses, their only method of protection is the kick, or the running, of course. So as I was saying, you get away from a horse if you're being sort of pushed by somebody on a horse. But if you have no choice, this is what you do. You grab the rein at the top of where the bit ring is. Don't put your finger into the bit ring, because if the horse pulls away, you lose your finger. Just grab the rein. Now, I told you that a horse follows its head. What you do is you start off either with your back to the horse's neck or facing the same direction as the horse. If you're facing the same direction as the horse, turn round. Remember, if the horse pushes you over and you're facing the horse, you go over on your back and you hit the back of your head on the pavement. That's not nice. If you have your back to the horse and you're pushed over, well, you've got your hands to help break your fall if necessary. Get hold of that rein and turn. Turn with your entire body against, your entire back against the horse's neck, and keep on turning. The horse will turn with you. Not if you yank. Again, as I said, if you yank, it's likely to throw its head up. It needs gentle pressure, and just turn. What will happen is then the horse will follow its head. It will start turning. Its bottom will go round away from you, and you can get away more easily, or whatever. I hope that's very clear. I just thought you might be interested in that little bit of information about how to deal with a horse. All right, so well, I'm Graniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I let people know about my videos using my Twitter, Gab or Parler handle, which is @Graniopteryx. And I have been very shocked by the tactics being adopted by the Canadian government and the so-called peacekeeping forces up to now. The whole thing is well, it's breaking my heart. Until next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.